right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Hopefully, you enjoyed that awesome keynote for the second time. So, welcome to session 5. This is a panel discussion, navigating the digital highway, and moderating the discussion is going to be Shaina Glass, Program Director of Technology Applications and STEM in Aldine ISD. Shaina, take it away.
Good afternoon, and I want to welcome everyone for joining us today for this awesome discussion we're getting ready to have about navigating the digital highway. Are we there yet? That is the question. I'm going to start off by introducing our fabulous panel. I'm going to start with our leader, our lead of leaders, Dr. Latonya Goffney, and I want to tell you all that I have asked them a question that they're getting ready to answer, just so we can break the ice a little bit. And so as I introduce them, I'm going to ask this question. Dr. Goffney, if there was a biopic made of your life, who would be the star as you?
I would have to go with Viola Davis. She is an amazing actress, and I've had some hard times, but some good times. And in every movie that she portrays, she does some hard characters, but you're able to see the good. And so I would have to go with Viola Davis.
Well, thank you so much, Miss Viola Davis. I can definitely see that. And welcome this afternoon.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Dr. Todd Davis, who is the Chief Academic Officer here in Aldine, who is over all of teaching and learning. Dr. Davis, if there was a biopic of your life, who would star as you?
That is a tough question. Okay, so it's between Bill Murray or Harrison Ford. So
Han Solo.
Bill Murray, because I think I take things too seriously sometimes, and I would like Bill Murray to lighten it up. But one of my favorite actors has always been Harrison Ford, and just because I've always thought he would be
good. Yeah,
he's a great actor, and if anybody can make me look cool, it's going to have to be Harrison Ford. It's going to be his greatest acting feat ever, but that would be who it would.
Well, you are cool, and he would do a magnificent job in the role of your life.
He's that cool.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm also going to announce Dr. Akilah Willery, newly Dr. Akilah Willery. Yes, the Executive Director of Professional Learning and Technology Integration here in Aldine. And Akilah, who would play you in the biopic of your life?
Well, when I tell you my answer, that tells a whole lot about me. I was a high school kid in the 80s, so firmly immersed in the hip hop culture. East Coast, I gotta say, West Coast, y'all are all a bunch of phonies. But but if the one person that always embodied everything as a woman for me was Queen Latifah. And I would say that with Queen Latifah, if she portrayed me on screen, it would be fire. You would think that I was all that, even though I'm still trying to get there. But just her as a strong female hip hop artist and how she evolved is something that is inspiring.
Excellent. I think she would do a magnificent job. So I want to let the audience know that today we're going to go through a series of questions. And if you have a question for our panelists, please drop it in the chat and we will go through, because I think there will be some time at the end for them to answer one of your questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to bring up the first question, which is going to go to Dr. Willery. What are the essential components needed to navigate the digital highway?
Well, I will say that the easy things that you can get out of the way is the stuff, the hardware. And that's purchasing whatever the devices are going to be, making sure that there is connectivity in your classrooms, in your buildings. The harder pieces are the things that are outside of that controlled environment. So once we shifted, like we have during 2020, to at-home learning environments, connectivity was a huge focus. And it wasn't something that we had to really think about in the past, because to educate the kids, we brought them to us. We brought them to an environment that we created. We made everything perfect for them. But when that was no longer a possibility, we were a little bit at a loss. We didn't know what was at home, who was at home either. But to try to make sure that there was something that was easy for them to navigate, that's the first piece, is that don't make it too complicated. The other essential component that is often overlooked, and I think it was even a bit of a blind spot for us, is making sure that our teachers had what they needed at home. I can say only for myself that it was an eye-opener with how many teachers, number one, said they didn't have any devices. The computer that they used every day was the computer that was in their classroom. And when they couldn't get to that classroom, they could not perform their job duties. Also connectivity for those teachers at home. And the other thing that is always going to be essential, and it's the kind of the plain vanilla piece in the mix, is making sure that you have one landing page, one learning management system, whatever it's going to be called, that's a one-stop shop for everybody to come to get to what they need. So if you've got 15 different places that your teachers have to go to, God forbid that your parents have to figure out without any of that formal education training, you've lost your number one partners in all of what we're trying to do. So that's what I would say is probably the most essential.
And Shaina, what I would add that I know Dr. Willery wouldn't say because she's so humble, but from a district perspective, having a professional and digital learning department that's a part of the teaching and learning team that is phenomenal has made it so assuring for our team. You know, when we think about March 6th and how we had to transition and think about all the different parts that she just alluded to, the people who had to make all these things come together, from the landing pad that she talked about, which our LMS at that time was Schoology. And if we'd ask you how many people were trained, we would have been shocked, Dr. Davis, if I were to say what was the percentage pre-March 6th that were trained on our landing pad, it would have been abysmal. However, within a drop of a hat, we had all 82 campuses, all teachers, everyone was trained and had access to some online training to support it. In addition, we couldn't just put devices in students' hands. There had to be a process for that. And so what has been essential and what has been beneficial, the people who are normally in the background, remember, I was the one who had the transparencies and the only time I ever called the technology people was when my overhead projector would turn on. We're back to the 90s.
Here we go again.
All the fancy equipment that we have. The only time that you all may have been called was when something didn't work. And now those people who were in the background are now in the foreground, and not because you want to be, because you have to be in order to meet the needs of our students and for our teachers. And so we have commended your team to Dr. Davis, but just to be able to say it publicly, when you think about essential components, you got to have some people who know what to do and how to do it and make all those pieces on the highway go forward.
Yeah, I can't emphasize that anymore. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. The number one component is to have a strong team that has the energy and the focus to provide the training just in time. And when we think back to March and that last weekend of spring break, and we knew we weren't coming back, and I got on the phone with Akilah, and so we've got to do something. And Akilah kept assuring me, we got this. We got this. We'll take care of it. Don't worry. And sure enough, we came out with a platform that really was a model for many other districts. And I was always just so proud to say, we're part of this, that we're part of Aldine and what we were able to provide for our students right off the bat. And, I think there's one other layer to this, though, and what our DLS team provides is that just-in-time training, because the most critical part of this is how do we get people who have resisted the digital highway, who have never experienced the digital highway, to now feel confident and competent in providing instruction that way. And our team did a phenomenal job. And, and here we are right now. We just had a conversation last week, Akilah and I. What do we do next? And because the the unique part of the digital highway that we're on right now is that we don't necessarily know what's ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to get ahead of some of these curves that are coming at us right now. And so it's that just in time, let's reflect and let's renew our practices so that we can stay current to the needs of our teachers. And again, we're just blessed to have a team that can do this for us.
So, Dr. Davis, I'm going to piggyback off of what you just said and how we have to look forward. My question to you now is, well, Dr. Goffney, actually, how should school districts go about ensuring that it is equitable access for all?
You know, one of the things, and you can't Google it, you can Google it, you can turn on, especially in April, it was like everyone realized all the different inequities that you all have already known, and in education we've already known, and it was everyone didn't have a device. You know, I said it, we want our students to learn at home, but they didn't have a device. And even to Dr. Willery's point earlier, some of our teachers, because of work situations, they didn't have devices at home. And so we had to look at that. In addition, y'all know I'm a country girl. And so I was accustomed to not having access in rural environments, but in the urban areas in Houston, it was a shock to find out that there were some connectivity issues. And so I think the one thing, and we as we look forward and as we look backward and think about where we are, hopefully the one thing that COVID will help us to solve is access to connectivity, access to devices. And our district is certainly, if I'd asked you all when I was coming in, let's go one-to-one. And I think we had some one-off conversations about what it would look like to have blended learning. It would have taken, you know, a committee, all kinds of different conversations. Everyone would have told us why we couldn't do it, while our kids couldn't have devices. But because we had to, we were forced to. So there's some other things that we're going to be forced to do. And one of the things that I'm hopeful about is it's going to force us to solve the access problem for students in areas that I thought were only rural, but here urban, and as well as we're going to be one-to-one by the end of this month. Dr. Alfred Stevens, if you're listening, or at least by the end of this year. We've already ordered them. They just hadn't come in yet, but once they get in, just think about that. Aldine, 67,000 students, we're going to be one-to-one. And what's even more powerful, because I know Dr. Willery is thinking that a device doesn't change anything if they don't have access. So we're working with different entities to make sure that there's connectivity. Because imagine, you know, that the resources and the amount of support that we've gotten from the city and from the county has been amazing. Because I think 10 years from now, just like when I tell people I grew up with no indoor plumbing, y'all kind of like clutch your pearls. There's going to be a time when we say everybody has access. That's how you apply for jobs. That's how you do your work. That's how, I mean, exactly. So that's going to be one of them. And so, but we can't do all of that, again, without the amazing team of people that we have.
Yeah, and to just extend off that, I think it's the consideration of the difference between the quality of access and equitable access. And, you know, when this all, and as Dr. Goffney said, getting hands in all of our students, we first need to make sure that everyone has equal access to that device and that access to the internet. And when we, as we all know, when we first got into this journey, we didn't have equal access. We pulled out all the stops. Every device we had, we tried to get out to the students who needed it. But the real challenge is now how do we navigate equitable access? We only have one device in a home of 5 or 6 children or multiple children. Right. And so it was about building our learning plan around an asynchronous model to, although we knew that synchronous instruction virtually was probably our best path towards mitigating the learning loss, we were still fighting that equitable access battle. And so the asynchronous plan was so necessary to put into play so that we could respect the real conditions that our families were facing. One child, multiple children in different schools, different grade levels, and how do we navigate a day of learning you know, with only one device? And then now as we're growing in the more devices in students' hands and our teachers are growing in their capacity, the real challenge now is how do we provide equitable access to serving the learning needs of our students?
That's good. That's
that differentiated instruction, and that's where our conversation last week, Akilah, it's like, now how can we build the toolbox of our teachers to provide that? How can we get, and like our keynote speaker said today, does everybody have a starting five? And are we relying on that? And does that starting five have a tool or tools that provide equitable instruction for all of our students?
Yes. Yes. And the other, I'm sorry. The other thing to remember when we talk about equity or equitable access, I know that our theme, because this is a conference that concentrates on the integration of technology, but also things that are beyond that. So when we think about our students that are language learners, our parents that are language learners, our students that are differently abled and have accessibility needs, this needs to be a part of the planning up front. And I want to credit our executive director of SPED, who in this district, Tracy Bailey, and then our former executive director, Catherine Seals, who opened my eyes to that in a very, very enlightening way, where it was, they said, you've got to plan for those students first. Bring that lens into the conversation first. And once you make sure that you're able to address those equity needs, whatever they may be, whether it's digital or if it's instructional or if it's physical, if it's hearing, if it's language, whatever that may be, you bring those things into the conversation first, and then all the other pieces will come together. You are working in an equitable sense at that point.
I want to say you guys really have answered the next question, but I want to speak on it a little bit more. So you said that you, Dr. Davis, you said you and Akilah were having this conversation about moving forward beyond this. What's next? The question is, what have you seen as the biggest challenge outside of the stuff? Right? Well, yeah. What is, so you're talking on it, but can you expand on what challenges is Aldine, what challenges are we facing as Aldine when it comes to this process that we've been through since March?
Well, I think you nailed it in what you just said, is that thinking about what's next. And the biggest challenge is that we can't get ahead of what we don't know. Getting ahead of the unknown is a significant challenge. In education, typically we can be visionary, we can make some predictive responses and things like that, but we don't necessarily know what's next on the landscape of learning. And so that constant effort to step ahead of the needs of our teachers, the needs of our students, is probably our biggest challenge. But I think in this first, let's say, 9 weeks of school, what we found is that to mitigate that challenge is to make sure that we're present in the learning, that we are paying attention to what students are experiencing, what teachers are experiencing, what the needs are in both environments, and getting as much feedback as we can. But also, while we're observing what's happening, not doing it in a critical way, but doing it with a supportive lens. That we're all vulnerable right now because we just need to find what are best practices. We know they're out there. Yeah. We just need to go find them and capture them, and then start to codify training around that and share these best practices broadly across the district. But again, I think our biggest challenge is that we don't have that same comfort of a year-over-year kind of cycle of learning, but because of the landscape is so different right now.
And I would just extend on, in the spring, we did the best we could as quickly as we could. And one of the things that Dr. Davis, when he's been at the table, has communicated that we wanted our students in the fall to have a much different experience than the spring. And, we've had several first days of school. And one of the things that's brought me joy is seeing, no matter virtually or face-to-face, how our students are learning, especially our students at the early grades, elementary. It doesn't matter. Our teachers are teaching and our students are learning. However, I would think the biggest challenge, though, while we've been able to provide a virtual experience for some that's meeting their needs, there are others who aren't engaged. They're checking in, they're showing up, and then they're disappearing. And so how do we, in the age of, I have a 16-year-old, and it's all about TikTok and Snapchat. Okay, I just showed how uncool I am.
We knew what you were saying.
But we want to end this. Some of our secondary students, especially, are checking in and then they're checking out. So how do we engage them in a different way? And how do we set them up to be successful? It's not like a classroom where they have. I know we've done a lot with Clever and we've done a lot with on Clever, and you have different ways of engaging students. But how do we replace that worksheet experience to something that's comparable to, evaluating them formatively so that we can see more of a success? I think across the state and the nation, many of our students are not doing well. They're not meeting the needs of, the learning, essential learning. I don't want to call them failures because they're not. It's just the time that we're in. The biggest challenge is now that we have this, we're building this system that's going to address schooling in a new way. But then how do we make sure that our students, especially our secondary students, are engaged in learning?
Right. And the one thing we as educators, we have a lot of terminology that we use, and we say things like engagement, or we talk about things that are basically educational jargon. And but ultimately what it comes down to is when that student shows up in that virtual space, do they feel connected to you? Do they feel a connection to the other human beings in that space? And I think that COVID, the school closure, everything that we've had to adjust, it kind of exposed that many of us take that for granted. When the students walk into a physical brick and mortar school building, it's not necessarily the learning objective that's going to get them riled up in the morning. It's going to be seeing other people. It's going to be able to come into a space with like-minded individuals, folks that can relate to their experience. And I think that is the biggest challenge, like Todd was saying, that in this virtual space, we got past the training of teaching teachers how to do the mechanics of virtual learning. Now we're asking the harder questions is how do we get those kids to feel connected in this digital space? And we don't have any easy answers just yet. So it's a lot of soul searching between us, the parents, and the students, everybody that's involved, to figure out how do I let you know and talk to that other human being through all of these digital means.
Yeah, and if I could just add, I hope we have time, but I think it's very important to add on to what you said, is that when we talk about finding those rock star teachers that have well-designed Schoology courses, but really making sure that we're correlating what we think is a well-designed lesson to have they actually engage their students. Are students completing the work, and are they showing evidence of learning from that designed course? And really making sure that that correlation is always present when we're developing what is the best practice. And also to understand too that as I said earlier, that this is so new, and that we've got to really emphasize or reward the creativity of our own teachers and how they're going about building these engaging practices. And I want to give just one example. When we watched many videos this last week around our literacy adoption, and there was just a wide spectrum of examples of how our teachers were engaging the virtual students. But our challenge now is that many are trying to engage face-to-face and virtual at the same time through live instruction, that co-seated environment. And and we watched one young man from Teague Middle School, and I wish I had his name so I could share it out here right now, but a language arts teacher at Teague Middle School, and he had his computer going, doing Zoom with his class, and then he had himself on his phone as a participant, but that allowed him to walk the room, and he was able to engage seamlessly his face-to-face with his virtual students. And it was just so as we're watching this, we're experiencing it as a virtual student. And I felt very connected with him on the way he was navigating that. And I thought that was something that he came up with. Maybe he stole it, I don't know, but I'm going to give all credit to him, that it was his creativity that came up with that. And then, we watched another teacher who was just simply recording himself as he was teaching his face-to-face. I wasn't engaged as a virtual learner. I felt like an outsider in that environment. And it's not that his intentions were off. It was just, we've got to build that skill set. We've got to share that best practice that we saw from the other teacher. And that's really where I feel like our teaching and learning, our digital learning specialists, that's where our responsibilities lie in really helping, again, capture those best practices, and now let's share them out. And so we've got everyone with a very engaging starting five that they can rely on every single day.
Absolutely. Dr. Goffney, I'm going to come to you. So hearing all of these things and where we are and how we support the students, you know, it takes more, I feel, my personal opinion, I feel it takes more to plan and prepare for a digital or whatever this environment is. It's a diverse environment. But how do we address the social and emotional climate of not only just the teachers and students, but the campus leaders, and even you, as you all as district leaders? How do we address that?
You know, as Dr. Davis was talking, you know, he knows that I'm always thinking, okay, how do we tear these silos down so that others can experience that classroom that he experienced? And one of the things that I've heard as I've listened to our teachers, and we have all kinds of ways in which we try to encourage our teachers to share their experiences. And even this week, they were like, Dr. Goffney, we recognize that we're in unprecedented times, but we need more time to do some of these things that you're asking us to do and you're wanting us to do. And we're, you know, our teachers have been positive. When you consider all the things that we've asked them to do since day one, you know, I'm very proud of our leaders who haven't slept and hadn't been able to, when I say hadn't slept, hadn't rested, hadn't gone on a vacation, because they knew that we had to do this new way forward in a whole new way. And so going back to our teachers, we've had numerous conversations on how we are going to give them some of the time that they need. You know, we are looking at ways to do that, and how can we do it in a way that doesn't take away from something else and give them something else to do. So please know that that's top of mind. But let's go back to like the social emotional support in general. We know that our teachers are there for our students, but how can we as leaders be there for them? And we rolled out, and we're thankful for the work of our social emotional learning department. Who would have thought a year ago when we were launching our strategic plan that it was going to be so important? But it's still a challenge, you know, because we only have so much time I'm going back and forth in my mind because I know I only have a little bit of time and I want to get it out because I know teachers are watching. So we have the social emotional learning department, and very proud of that. We have the CARES teams that are meeting the needs of the students. We have the different ways in which our teachers can call EAP and get support that way. But I'm thinking about the 85% who are trying to do the best they can while also trying to continue to navigate this COVID crisis personally and then professionally. And so the challenge is, how do we give them more time and take some things off of them so that they can be more excited about some of the things that they're being asked to do? And so I know we've looked at several different things, and I'm trying not to announce anything because then I'm going to be held to it. But I do want our teachers to know, Aldine teachers to know, that we're having conversations about how can we allow you to reclaim some of your time so that you can look at some of the best practices and design your own personal PD. I'm hoping that Dr. Davis will say some things that we can say in a way that doesn't hold us to, because it's not totally mapped out. We're still continuing to get information. As you said, you're going to have conversations with Dr. Willery about how we can do that, how we can have a day and go from there. Not just a day, but days over time. And I know the school's office is working with us to think about giving our teachers some time and going from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I know Katie Brody and the school's office are looking at options that maybe we can recapture some time where we can continue learning, but then teachers can take a step back and come together and plan, but not just a one-off, but maybe this is something that we can continue moving forward. And you know, my wife is a teacher, and I know that's really all she talks about is like, I just need to stop for a moment and collect myself, and I just need to get ahead of this rather than this perpetual I'm behind. And so
Right.
we do have some things that are on in the works. And in addition to that time, like I said, then maybe we have some small opportunities for learning that are embedded within that are timely, that are relevant, that again teachers can feel like they're really building their toolkits.
Yeah, and adding to that, I know that we're thinking about our current district, and you can't even put it into words how fortunate we are here that we have those resources, we have that structure in place where, number one, those conversations are happening, but there are teams that are actively working on it right now. I know that is not everyone's truth. Not every educator is in that situation. So with the people that are watching us right now, we're international. We've got 22 countries, I think, that are watching us at this moment. And speaking to the people that are closest to the work, the teachers that are in the classrooms, or whatever that classroom may look like, whether it's virtual or brick and mortar, to remember to set some boundaries. And this was one of those lessons that I had to learn as a teacher, where I was that person that was first one in the building, I was the last one out of the building, and worked to death until everything was absolutely perfect. Might have been borderline OCD issues, I don't know, but I couldn't go home and sleep until everything was perfect for the kids the next day. But I suffered during that time. My classroom was perfect, the kids were engaged, but I went home at the end of the day, at the end of the week, and there was nothing left for me. So in this type of situation where our work environment and our home environment is a little bit blurred because you're teaching from your bedroom or teaching from your kitchen table, there's gonna have to be some times where you literally get up and let go. If all you can afford to do is go for a walk or turn off your email or not answer that text for just an hour, you got to do that. You've got to clear your head, release some of that stress, because the whole time that you are in that mindset and you're stressing yourself out, your physical health is going to start to suffer. And when that happens, you can't show up for the people that you're working for. And we work for the kids. That's our focus. That's our product that we put out into the world every single day, are human beings that we hope we've nurtured and made them productive human beings. But if we fall apart, then we're going to show up in pieces for the very people that we need to support the most. So
excellent. Before I go to the last question I'm going to ask everyone in the audience, if you have a question, now is your time to drop it in the chat. So I am going to ask the panel one last question from myself, and then we're going to look at the questions that you may have to ask them. This is your time. No, they're all over the district, so you have a hard time catching them. Really hard to catch them. But you have her for a few minutes. So what did you She's listening. So here's my final question to all of you. Here's the elephant in the room. This was the title of our session. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? If not, if we're not all the way down this digital highway, where would your educational leadership take us? Where as you, as our district leader, take us next?
Well, I'll say flat out no. We're not there yet. We're nowhere close to being there, and I'll put that in air quotes. And if we ever feel we have arrived to that destination where everything is figured out, then we are working with blinders, because the point of this is to continue to evolve. We know when you and I, Shaina, and everyone else that was originally from that ed tech space, when we got into that game, it was because education had stalled for roughly 100 years. And we've all seen the famous memes where they have the picture of the classroom from the industrial age and the picture of a classroom in the modern age, and they were identical. There might have been electricity that was a little bit fancier, furniture that was a little bit sleeker, but ultimately it was the same educational experience. And Finally, what I will say is that even though we're not there yet, as far as, where, rainbows and birds chirping and everything, and everyone has what they need, we're finally asking the right questions. And that's what gets me excited. We are finally thinking about equity, not where everybody gets the stuff, but then once you get the stuff, what else do you need to be successful? Because what you need to be successful is different from me. I'm in an urban area that is very diverse. I feel very blessed that I'm surrounded by people from different cultures, so I'm constantly learning and asking questions. But then I also want to know that everyone can have access to that experience. And when we have entire communities that don't have basic connectivity at home, they're being denied a human right. It's beyond just having food, water, and shelter these days. It's food, water, shelter, connectivity.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have that connectivity, as COVID has shown us, you can't buy groceries. You can't apply for a job. You can't connect to your child's school or teacher. You can't connect to a healthcare provider. And these are the types of things that I think we've taken for granted. Because I have it, everybody else must be okay. But we can't take that for granted anymore. We've got to think of it as a basic human right. And when people are denied that basic human right, that's a barrier that cuts them off from all other avenues.
Mm. Amen.
Yep.
Amen. Like it is, I can't say it better. Of course, we're not there, but I hate this COVID crisis, and please don't take this any other way than in the spirit in which I'm giving it, to say that had it not been for COVID, taking this lemon and making some lemonade, I do think it's shown a light on the inequities, but it's also shown a light on what's possible. And so as we think about what's possible, the things that you all knew, and it's catapulted us forward in a way that I think is going to be beneficial for years to come. Yes, there's going to be some deficits, and we can talk about that in another panel. But really, by the end of this month, by the end of this year, 1-to-1 in Aldine, the training, it's been phenomenal. Our teachers are doing things that I did not think that they would embrace and be able to do really well, and they are. Even in the midst of COVID, when I go in classrooms now, it's not, I don't have to go into a private school or a school across here and see devices. There are devices in every room. I was in a pre-K room, and she had it open, and she was logging into Schoology by herself, and then she was logging into Clever by herself, and then she was where the teacher wanted her to be. I went in a bilingual classroom, and the same thing was happening. So while these times are not good, don't get me wrong, and I know we're not there, I can just speak for Aldine, but I hope it's the case for most districts across. As we think about making lemonade out of these lemons that have been given to us, we're much farther ahead at demonstrating what's possible when we're all new. Like, we're all new teachers, so we're all trying to learn and think and grow through this.
Yeah, I love that you asked this question, because as Akilah said and Dr. Goffney said, absolutely not. We're not there. And the minute that I ever say that we're there, or any educator in Aldine says, "Oh yeah, we've made it," that's the moment that you've lost sight of your responsibility as an educator.
Right.
Because there is always a challenge. There is always a need that we will have to serve, and it is ever changing. And I think that's one of the most exciting and rewarding parts of our job, is that we will never get there, but it's always about our path or our journey to continually serve needs of our students. And it's just, our world is ever evolving. What we're going to, unfortunately, possibly experience in a couple weeks with the divisive political climate that we have right now, that's another challenge that we now need to really start thinking about and getting ahead of. And how are we supporting our students through something that we've never likely ever experienced. And so that, again, that's our role as professional educators, as ethical people, to make sure that we are always looking towards how can we better serve our students' needs. And so we will never ever be there. Ever. So
So we're at 10 minutes, and we did have a few questions to come in. I am going to take one of the questions, and I am going to ask each of you to, this is a good one to sum up. So what is one goal that you have for us for the next upcoming school year, looking forward? If you could come up with one goal that you're working on now, what would that goal be?
Okay, well,
Ooh, I think we got them quiet.
Because, well, I mean, and I know they're probably churning, because I think we've done a lot of soul searching in a very dark time of things that we feel are most important, and we had a whole lot of the frivolous things that were X'd out of our day. And we were forced to sit in a space and answer some very hard questions. And I know that question of what your goals are going forward, it's very complicated, because I could easily say, oh, I'm going to lose weight and buy all new clothes and everything. You know, it's like big whoop, you know. The question's a lot deeper beyond that. And I can say, at least for me professionally, one thing that this situation that we sit in right now, with virtual learning being such a hot topic and controversial topic, because we can't say that we're doing it well. Nobody can say that we're doing this well. But I am very eager to start shaping what that is. And again, I can only speak from a seat of privilege, because in this district, we have always had a virtual school program, a solution, but it concentrated on a very narrow part of the population. And I would like to expand that, because I believe that even though COVID is our current situation, I think the solutions that we've had to provide in response to COVID will become a little more universal for other situations in the future. So it's like, now that we've got this, let's fine tune it. Let's figure out, how do we make it better? And it could be an option for students from here on out, COVID or not, pandemic or not, whatever it may be. We now have another solution that we think, or at least I believe, is worth exploring for the future.
Mm-hmm. And I love that. And I love how you kind of tweaked it from a goal to just, how we're going to approach moving forward. And it's like she was in a room, Dr. Davis, when you and I had a conversation a couple of days ago. But thinking about this time, it's working for a lot of our kids. And so which pieces do we take moving forward? It's about, we're about to face a legislative session. So what do we advocate for? I was talking to, I think it was you, Dr. Davis, or it may have been Ms. Rhodey, Chief of Schools, about the fact that now when a high school kid, my daughter has braces, she has to go to the orthodontist, she misses a class. She doesn't have to miss the class. She basically logs in and she does her work from the orthodontist, she comes back. And while we've always gotten ADA for that, but making that a way of life, where a kid who misses a day or two or three because of a situation is still being able to get their needs met academically. And so I think our goal moving forward for next year, if the conditions are different, and I'm hopeful and optimistic and definitely prayerful that they're going to be better. The one goal, of course, is to, continue to retain the leaders and teachers that we have who are doing fantastic work, support that work during our summer activities and different opportunities for to continue to grow, to continue to meet the needs of our students. And remember, we have quite a few who we're not doing, it's not working. And so what are we going to do to address that COVID slide? So I go into problem solving, so it's hard for me to set a goal. But looking forward to how we move forward despite COVID, in spite of COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, with COVID. I don't know how you say it, but, just how does this experience inform our new way forward in Aldine?
Yeah, there's really a lot that it's hard to narrow kind of down into what is that primary goal. And I think that through a lot of the conversations we've had lately, I've really become driven by our responsibility in the teaching and learning department to be major players in ensuring that we do have equitable access for our students in our district. And I think my primary goal right now is that we've got to, in order to provide curriculum, provide pedagogy that is culturally responsive, we first need to work on us as adults and start making it safe to have some really difficult conversations. And I look within our department, we have a responsibility to provide the structures for equity, but do we have our minds right around that? And so it's putting the conditions in place where we can have tough conversations about race and privilege and bias and culture, and that that it's safe, that we're going to make mistakes, that we're going to be vulnerable, but ultimately it's an environment that we as adults can embrace our own reality, and then our reality of our responsibility for our students and the services we provide. So that's forefront now. But the big challenge in that, and this is one thing that a presenter that we saw yesterday, Dr. Goffney, said, is that so much of what we do is rhetoric-facing language. It has to be tangible.
Rhetoric-facing
has to be tangible.
That's it.
So when it comes to equity, I feel like we've had a lot of rhetoric-facing language, lip service to it. Now it's time for us to do the hard work and make it tangible. And
that was good.
That was excellent. That was a way to sum up our time together. We have approximately a little over 3 minutes remaining. I want to say thank you all. This has been an honor to moderate this conversation between the three of you. You did a phenomenal job. I know the audience, if you are looking at the comments, definitely check out the TCCA 2020 hashtag. I know several of them have tagged all of you on social media, and I will too. I really think I might even go back after this because I'm gonna need to reflect on this. I think I'm gonna gift you all with a blog post on your conversation because I think it deserves. I think it deserves to be stated again and again so that people understand where we are, not just as Aldine, not just as Houston, but just as a country, that you literally are discussing what all district leaders are facing, and those tough conversations that are required to be had. And you are. So thank you all. Thank all of you who are here. I know Ann is going to jump on now to tell us the super secret word.
I feel like that show, like the password is. Yes, there were good questions and comment, and I wish we had more time to get to them. They were asking some really good assessment questions and stuff. I would have loved to have gotten to that one, but unfortunately, you guys, we are out of time. Next session starts in 10 minutes. Your super secret password for this session, however, is tenacity. It is case sensitive, capital T, 10A city, tenacity. So look in your email for that password at the end of session and put that in there to unlock your certificate. And again, thank you all. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Shaina, for moderating. Thanks. I'm going to go ahead and end our broadcast.
Thank you, Shaina. Thank you, Dr. Willery. Later, Dr. Davis.